I worked front desk at a boutique hotel in Copenhagen for 3 years. One July evening, an American family checked in and immediately asked where they could watch the fireworks. I told them Denmark's Constitution Day was in June. We had no fireworks tonight. The father looked at me like I'd insulted his grandmother. "It's July 4th, he said slowly, as if I were confused. "Independence Day. Every country celebrates American independence." I blinked. His wife nodded along. "It's a global holiday," she added. "Like Christmas." I explained that Denmark had its own independence history and didn't celebrate American holidays. He asked to speak to my manager. When my manager, a very Danish man named Lars, explained the same thing, the father said, "This is exactly why Europe needs American leadership." They went to Tivoli Gardens that night and complained the next morning that the 4th of July decorations were historically inaccurate. The decorations were for a local summer festival. They left a review saying we were anti-American. This is the kind of cultural comedy that only makes sense if you've lived it. I've spent years collecting these stories, not because they're funny, but because they reveal how power and perspective travel. If you want to see the next layer most people miss, subscribe. It's the only way you'll actually catch the next one. My colleague in Amsterdam once had an American demand to know why Dutch trains didn't accept dollars. "It's international currency," the man insisted. In Prague, a tourist tried paying his restaurant bill with a personal check from a Kansas bank. He couldn't understand why they needed check money for check food. These stories share something. Americans genuinely believing their systems, holidays, and logic apply everywhere. Not maliciously, just with absolute, unshakable confidence. I managed a cafe in Stockholm when an American asked for his coffee to go. We gave him a ceramic mug, our standard for all coffee. He stared at it. I said to go. "This is a mug." I explained we didn't use disposable cups except by special request, environmental policy. He held up the mug. "So I'm supposed to walk around Stockholm with this?" I suggested he could sit, enjoy his coffee, and then leave. He looked genuinely offended. In America, personal freedom means I can take my coffee wherever I want. That's what liberty looks like. He pulled out his phone and started Googling Swedish environmental laws, convinced they were unconstitutional. When I pointed out Sweden had its own constitution, he said, "Yeah, but based on America's, right?" He left the mug on a park bench 3 blocks away. A local returned it the next day. My sister drives a bus in Munich. An American couple boarded, looked at the payment screen, and froze. "This is in euros," the husband said. My sister confirmed yes, this was Germany. We used euros. He pulled out a $50 bill. "This should cover 2 tickets." My sister explained she couldn't accept dollars. He unfolded the bill slowly, pointed at it, and said, "This is legal tender. It says so right here." Legal. Most people stop at laughing at moments like this. I don't. I trace how mindsets like these evolve, what they say about identity and empire. If you like connecting dots instead of just collecting stories, you belong here. Subscribe. You'll see why this series isn't just about travel. It's about worldview. Tender. His wife jumped in. "We've used dollars in Mexico and Canada. This is discrimination." My sister explained those countries sometimes accepted dollars as courtesy near borders. But this was Munich, hundreds of miles from any American border. The husband demanded documentation proving euros were more legal than dollars. He held up the line for 11 minutes, arguing that because America had the strongest economy, its currency should be universally accepted. They finally paid with a credit card. As they sat down, he told other passengers, "German bureaucracy is why they lost the war." I worked at a pharmacy in Oslo when an American woman asked for Tylenol. I directed her to paracetamol, the same drug, different name. She picked up the box, studied it, and set it down. "This isn't Tylenol. The box is different." I explained it was identical medication, just European packaging and name. She shook her head. American Tylenol is FDA approved. I don't know what standards Norway has. I told her Norway's medicines agency had extremely strict standards, among the world's highest. She squinted at me. Higher than the FDA? She said it like I'd claimed Norway invented flight. She bought nothing, walked 4 blocks to another pharmacy, asked the same question, got the same answer, and ended up at a 3rd pharmacy. That pharmacist was my roommate. He sold her paracetamol by saying, "This is Nordic Tylenol." She bought 3 boxes. Later she told him, "You should import real Tylenol. You'd make a fortune." I gave walking tours in Florence for 2 summers. An American couple joined my Renaissance architecture tour and kept interrupting. At the Duomo, the husband asked why Italian buildings copied American style. I explained these buildings were 500 years old, long before America existed as a nation. He nodded slowly. Right, but architecturally, this looks like Washington, D.C., so somebody copied somebody. His wife suggested maybe Italian immigrants to America remembered these buildings and recreated them. I confirmed yes, that was exactly backward from what happened. American buildings copied Italian Renaissance style. The husband looked unconvinced. At the Ponte Vecchio, he asked when they'd rebuild it properly. He'd seen photos where it looked less old. I explained it was deliberately preserved as historical heritage. He said, in America we'd modernize it. That's progress. His wife took a selfie and posted it with the caption, "Italy's version of the Brooklyn Bridge." They asked if Michelangelo ever visited New York for inspiration. My cousin works customs at Tokyo Narita Airport. An American arrived without a visa, insisting he didn't need one. The customs officer explained Japanese visa requirements. The American pulled out his passport. This is a U.S. passport. That means visa-free access everywhere. The officer patiently explained that, no, different countries had different agreements. The American literally said, "We won World War II. We have an understanding." The officer asked him to clarify. He said, "After the war, there was an agreement. Americans can travel freely in former enemy territories for reconstruction monitoring." The officer stared. "Sir, that treaty doesn't exist." The American insisted he'd learned this in high school. He demanded to speak to someone who understood post-war protocols. They brought a supervisor who explained again that he needed a visa. The American filed a complaint claiming Japan was violating 1945 surrender terms. He missed his connecting flight, arguing about MacArthur's legacy. I worked a ski resort rental shop in the Swiss Alps when an American asked why our mountains weren't labeled. I asked what he meant. He swept his arm toward the peaks. "The mountains? How do we know which is which?" I explained we had maps with names and elevations. He shook his head. "No, like signs on the mountains. America puts signs on mountains so you know what you're looking at." I told him these were natural formations. We didn't install signage on summits. He seemed baffled. How do people know where they are? I showed him the trail maps again. He studied them and frowned. "These names are in German." I confirmed yes. We were in the German-speaking part of Switzerland. He asked if we had English maps. We did. He looked at them and said, "These aren't the real names, though." When I asked what he meant, he said, "The real names are in German. So the English is just translation. In America, the names are in English originally. That's more authentic." He told other customers the Swiss tourism industry was disorganized. I bartended at a small pub in Dublin during the World Cup. An American walked in during the Ireland match, squeezed through the crowd, and ordered a beer. I asked which beer. We had 12 on tap. He glanced at the taps and said, "American beer." We didn't carry any American brands. He looked surprised. "It's the World Cup. Shouldn't you have all the country's beers?" I explained the World Cup was football, not beer, and Ireland's pubs typically featured Irish and European beers. He processed this. So you're saying during an international event, you only stock local beer? That's pretty nationalist. I offered him Guinness. He made a face. Too heavy. Don't you have Bud Light? I listed our lighter lagers. He interrupted. Those aren't American, though. How do American tourists drink here? I suggested they drank Irish beer, like the 7 American tourists currently cheering at the far end of the bar. He glanced over. They're settling. He ordered water, watched 10 minutes of the match, and asked why Ireland wasn't playing America. When I explained America hadn't qualified for this World Cup, he said, "That's probably political." He left after Ireland scored, saying the celebration was excessive. His friend stayed, ordered a Guinness, and apologized. He thinks everywhere is America with different accents, she said. We're from Texas. It's worse there. These stories aren't about ignorance. They're about confidence. The unshakable belief that American systems are default settings, that the rest of us customized things weirdly. When Americans call their approach independence, they sometimes mean independence from acknowledging other systems exist. Not all Americans, but enough that every bartender, hotel clerk, and tour guide has a story. Next time, I'll share stories about Americans discovering metric system inaccuracies, tipping confusion that escalated to police involvement, and the man who tried returning a meal because the chicken tasted too European. I unpack stories like these every week, not just to mock, but to map the psychology of global arrogance and cultural assumptions. If this kind of slow-burn insight is your language, subscribe now. You'll never see travel or America the same way again. If you've worked hospitality anywhere outside America, you know exactly what's coming.